Welcome to the It's Probably Fine Club. I started this club for all the people who thought something was probably fine, or was told something was probably fine, and later discovered it absolutely was not. Today's story is about a family that finally got everything that they worked for. The parents were pushing 50, the kids were teenagers, and after years of hard work, they bought a brand new home on acreage out in the country. The kind of place where you imagine spending the rest of your life. The kind of place where you pull into the driveway and you think, we finally made it. And for a little while, everything was exactly the way they hoped it would be. Then the first cold snap arrived. Not a real northern winter, just one of those North Florida mornings where you suddenly need a jacket. The mother got the kids ready for school, made breakfast, handled all the normal chaos of getting teenagers out the door, and before they left, she did something completely ordinary. She turned on the heat. She dropped the kids off at school. The father was out driving his truck route. The house sat empty. A couple hours later, she was driving home. And before she even reached the property, she saw smoke rising above the trees. At first, she hoped it wasn't her house. Like maybe somebody nearby was burning brush. Maybe somebody was clearing debris. Maybe it was anything else, anything except her house. But the closer she got, the worse it looked. And then she realized the smoke was coming from her property. Can you imagine that feeling? You're driving home, you've been gone for a couple hours, and before you even get there, you already know something is terribly wrong. She called 911 immediately, but the house was out in the country. The fire station wasn't around the corner. Help wasn't minutes away, and every minute mattered. By the time the firefighters arrived, the fire was already out of control. There was nothing they could do. The house was a total loss. Everything was gone. The home, the belongings, the memories, the dream they had spent years building toward, gone. Naturally, everyone wanted to know what happened. What causes a brand new house to burn down? Was it lightning? Was it an appliance? Arson? Something the homeowners had done? A construction defect? Nobody knew, and it took many months for investigators to figure it out. The family needed answers. The insurance company needed answers. And eventually they found the answer. And when I heard it, I could hardly believe it. The cause was two wires. That's it. Not something left on the stove, not a lightning strike, not arson. Two wires connected to the wrong terminals during the installation of the HVAC system. And suddenly the cold morning made sense. The first morning cold enough to turn on the heat. The first time the heating system had really been called upon to do its job. The crossed wires had been sitting there since the day the house was built, hidden, waiting. Nobody knew they were there. Nobody could see them. Nobody caught the mistake. The family believed they were moving into a safe, brand new home. But because why wouldn't they? Like most people, they assumed somebody had already checked everything. Why hire a home inspector? It's brand new, right? The reason this story stuck with me is that I understood exactly why they didn't hire a home inspector. Years earlier, when I bought my first brand new house, I didn't hire one either. I assumed new meant safe. I assumed somebody had already checked everything, and I was wrong. Most people assume a brand new house doesn't need a home inspector. Most people assume it's probably fine. The tragic part is that the fire wasn't actually the end of the story. In many ways, it was just the beginning. They survived the fire. What they couldn't survive was everything that came afterward. Most people assume that when a house burns down, the insurance company writes a check and the family rebuilds, and sometimes that's true. This wasn't one of those times. The investigation took time. The insurance process took time. And while everybody was trying to figure out what caused the fire, life kept moving. Bills kept arriving, mortgage statements kept arriving. Oh, and now they had a new monthly rent payment to pay. Deadlines kept arriving, and this happened during the 2008 foreclosure crisis. Property values were collapsing, land wasn't selling, the lender wasn't exactly being patient. Everything that could go wrong seemed to go wrong. This family had finally gotten their chance, and because of a fire they didn't cause, they ended up losing the home and the land anyway. The mortgage eventually went into foreclosure. The acreage still had value, but the homeowner's insurance only covered the structure that had been destroyed, not the land. So it paid off part of the mortgage, but it was not enough to pay off the whole mortgage. And because the real estate market had collapsed, selling the land was not a realistic option. So the situation spiraled into a complicated legal and financial mess. And what has always stayed with me is that this family had finally reached a milestone they had worked toward for years, and then a hidden defect that nobody even knew existed changed the course of their lives, not because anyone intended harm, not because anyone woke up planning to destroy a family's dream, but because somewhere during construction, two wires were connected incorrectly and nobody caught it. That's why this story belongs in the It's Probably Fine club, because people imagine disasters happen because of giant mistakes, but often they begin with details nobody thinks are important. Two wires, small details, massive consequences. And that brings us to today's lessons. One of the reasons I tell these stories is because people often hear someone raising concerns about a small detail and they think, oh, come on, what is the big deal? What's the risk? But sometimes the small detail is the whole story. Sometimes the difference between success and disaster is one line on a form, one missing roof component, one overlooked symptom, or two wires. So for all new and existing members of the It's Probably Fine club, have you ever experienced a situation where a tiny mistake caused a huge problem? Leave it in the comments below. And remember, the details matter more than people think they do. I'll see you next time.